Okay, so let's assume at this point you have your podcast idea in the bag. It's not named yet, but you have your podcast idea in the bag. Uh, so now there are three tips and tricks that I think every podcaster at this stage should do, and most don't. So if you do these things, you're going to be so much ahead of 95%, 98% of podcasters that are actually getting started. So what I would actually suggest at this point is that we've been collecting a little bit of information, we've been writing things down. Why don't you take one notebook or a journal and dedicate that just for this process? So that going forward from this point on, you have one place with this entire set of ideas and set of procedures that we've been going through. So once you got that, you can pause the video right here. You can actually get that. And then once you come back, we can get started. So I'm assuming that you've got your journal with you. So at this point, I want you to go through three things. The first one is I want you to define your ICP or your ideal customer profile. Again, startup terminology, but I think it has an incredible amount of weightage when it comes to somebody that's looking to start their podcast, predominantly because podcasting is a blind medium. So oftentimes when somebody's creating their show, they are trying to serve and basically create something that appeals to everybody. And in appealing to everybody, they end up not appealing to anybody or appealing to few people to a very small capacity. So what I want you to do is create this ideal customer profile almost from the perspective as though this is somebody who's a friend and is the only person you're going to be speaking to when you're creating this show. This is the only person in the mind of you if you're creating a solo show, or you and your co-host if you're creating a co-hosted show, or even if you're creating an interview show, you as the creator of the show need to have this person in your mind. And the more detailed you can get, the better it is. So let's come up with a fictional podcast idea. We've not named this podcast idea yet, but we want to create a podcast. I'm just riffing here, but a podcast on how to start a startup, bite-sized episodes on how to start a startup in an extremely structured manner. And that's the idea that we have. Haven't given it much thought, but let's assume that that's currently the idea that we have. So now with our ideal customer profile, our ICP, let's start to define who this person is. So this person is, I'm going to name him Jay. Now, Jay is between 18 to 22 years old. Jay happened to be a humanities student, so he studied social sciences, has no experience with programming. Jay is somebody who's a dreamer himself. He's just started working, and he's working in a corporate gig. This is his first job. And as a consequence, he's getting a little bit of money in his pocket for the first time, and he's not very wise with how he spends it yet. So every time something comes up that, catches his eye, he tends to make a quick purchase without thinking too much about ramifications. Jay is well educated, but more than anything else, Jay is realizing on the daily that the corporate life isn't for him. The country that Jay is in, not just the country, but the entire world at this point that's so interconnected, very taken by the possibility of anybody being able to create a company of their own and anybody being able to start up on their own. And this is something that Jay wants to do. So essentially, Jay wants to do this, but he's aware of his constraints. He does not have a lot of money. He is well educated. He is somebody who likes to hang out with his friends a bunch. He is getting a little bit of startup information by subscribing to certain newsletters. You can even write the newsletters if that works for you. Jay does not know coding or programming of any kind. So this is something that's scaring him and daunting him from taking the plunge. He spends his days jotting down ideas, and every idea that he comes up with makes his heart pump a little bit faster and makes his chest swell because he gets so excited and gets caught up in the rush of what this idea could be. As I said, Jay is a dreamer. And now that we're talking about Jay this much, what will start to happen is every time you're going to be creating an episode, if you've written all of these different characteristics down and you just write it a little bit more, Jay used to play football when he was growing up. This is the relationship that he has with his friends. He's an extroverted person. He has only grown up in one place all his life. You will start to speak specifically to Jay. And that's a very powerful thing rather than speaking to anybody and everybody, because there will be a lot of people that fall into this ICP. And every time you're going to be creating an episode, since you're going to be speaking to this ICP, or you're going to be speaking to this MVS, which is a minimum viable segment, similar to an ICP, you're going to be hitting them and targeting them with the information that is extremely pertinent to them. You will be coming up with episodes on how somebody who does not have a programming background, who does not have experience under their belt, who does not necessarily have a large amount of capital under their belt, can go about creating a startup. You are cognizant of the fact that people like Jay don't have too much time to listen to shows. They will listen in their morning commute to work. They will listen on their evening commute back from work. And at best, they listen at night. So you have these 3 windows, and this will come into effect and play when you think about when to drop your episodes. So all of this visualization is going to actually start helping a ton when it comes to actually releasing your episodes. The second thing, which is essentially another trick that one should be thinking about at this phase, once you've got your vague and broad idea set in place, is coming up with the transaction or the quid pro quo between you and the listener. They are giving you their time. What are you giving them back in return? And this should be something that you can describe very effectively. So maybe the objective is that you want to take Jay from the point of coming up with an idea all the way to his first 100 users after launching his MVP. And you want to be able to do this for Jay in a bite-sized format where every week you're telling him and prescribing exactly what he should be doing, how he should be, poking holes through his concept, the questions he should be asking himself, how he should be thinking about no-code solutions, how he should be thinking about, getting a little bit of primary research in and secondary research in so that he understands his market a little bit better, how he can actually get a little bit of, information and inspiration from products that are already out there in the market. So basically, speaking to Jay from the perspective that this is a transaction where in your mind, you know that Jay is already giving you his time. You need to give Jay something back in return, and you want to be able to deliver on that promise by the end of every season. And this can be from season to season. You can actually alter this. So in season 1, it can be, I want you to get to MVP. Season 2, it can be, I want you to get to your first 1,000 customers or users. Season 3 can be, I want you to raise your first round of investment. So essentially coming up with a very logical, quid pro quo between you and the listener. And the third thing that I want you to do, and this is, I would say, one of my favorites. Whenever somebody comes up with an idea, especially a podcast idea, people tend to be extremely excited about it. And oftentimes what I tell folks is, I want you to take this podcast idea of yours, let it be unnamed, but I want you to write 50 potential episodes. I don't want you to script them out. I don't want you to write the full episode. I just want you to write the title. I just want you to write the bare minimum of what 50 episodes are going to look like. Because when somebody's starting their show, normally folks have about 8 to 10 good episodes in them, or they have 8 to 10 good episode ideas within them, and they keep going in circles with those ideas themselves in their heads without knowing or thinking about whether this show has an evergreen capacity or whether it doesn't. When somebody's starting out a show, they should consciously think about that show's potential longevity, because if that show takes off, then they should definitely have the potential or capability of carrying on that show well past 50 episodes. So, ask yourself, can you write down 50 titles? Can you write down 50 episode ideas? And if you can, I promise you're already so far ahead of everybody else that's starting out their show, because not only do you know who you're talking to, you have Jay in your mind. Not only have you created a set transaction between you and the listener in your mind, which is very important to do, very few people do it, but you've also written down a potential set of episodes before already getting started. And the beauty about all of this is that when, let's say, 6 months from now, 7 months from now, 8 months from now, you end up going to a sponsor and you actually show them that this is your ICP or this is your NVS, and this is the transaction that exists between you and them, and this is how you define them in a particular way, you will have a much higher chance of potentially gaining sponsorship from them, or potentially landing somebody who wants to integrate with your podcast, because you have a very pinpoint approach to how you approach your show, as opposed to folks that are, looking at their podcast from a very amorphous capacity, which is something that brands hate more than anything else. I can promise you this right now. So this set of few tips and tricks should really help you along your way. And I really urge you to do each and every one of them diligently. So look forward to seeing you in the next one. And I'm having a blast so far. I hope you guys are having a good day.